Right then, Sukuna versus Dabura. I know everyone wants to hear about it. Not everyone's gonna like what we've got to say because there's lots of Sukuna glazers out there and there's lots of Dabura glazers out there. Realistically, they're both absolute monsters, and I think we're gonna have a fun time breaking down this fight. So, without any further yap, I think you guys should probably like and subscribe so that I become super rich and famous. And let's get right into the video. But first, a special guest announcement, yeah.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. Yep, I am No Operator. I've covered Jujutsu Kaisen for a while, and I am excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, so I actually want to start with the Sukuna glaze because I feel like it really has been a hot minute since the fandom has, revisited Sukuna and basically just taken the time to glaze him, which is crazy because, it's Sukuna. And what I want to do is basically just go through each version of Sukuna, so 15 finger in Yuji's body, 20 finger or 20 finger equivalent Megana, and then of course the Heian form Sukuna that we get at the end of the series. Because weirdly enough, Sukuna's first ever proper showing in the series, at least if you don't count Jogo, because let's be real, he was kind of playing with his food there, is against Mahoraga, and as we know, Dabura's first and only real big showcase of his power in Modulo is against Mahoraga, so it's quite a neat little comparison to open the video with. Now, I actually want to use the anime version of Sukuna versus Mahoraga. Yeah, I know. Oh my god, I'm not using the source material, what the hell? Yeah, well, the anime has just got more source, and based on the fact that Dabura versus Mahoraga literally took direct inspiration from the anime by Gege Akutami, I feel justified in using that as a way of kind of gauging the level that Sukuna was at against Mahoraga. I mean, this Mahoraga dude, bro, he was reduced to atoms, bro. He got Thanos snapped out of existence and then just immediately regenerated back. He did pretty much the same thing against Dabura. So, level playing field. I don't see a problem with using it, and it just adds that little bit more sauce because both of them were moving so different in that beautiful season of anime. And yeah, what I love about that fight is you can see, even at a 15 finger level, even not in his own body, while in Yuji's body, having not properly fought for literally 1,000 years, you can immediately see how much of an absolute menace this Sukuna guy is, bro. He is already on a completely different level to anybody else in the verse, besides Satoru Gojo, who at the time was sealed, and even then Kenjaku seemed to think that Sukuna at a 15 finger level would be capable of at least handling Gojo, maybe not killing him, but handling him in some capacity. Just immediately, already, 15 finger Sukuna is like a serious conversation to be having, even when talking about someone as unbelievably strong as Dabura. And unlike Dabura, who, kind of had his little panic attack moment during the fight against Mahoraga, Sukuna had complete control of the fight, alright? He was driving. He was at the front seat, hands on the wheel. Mahoraga was out of control, locked in the boot. That's what was going on in that fight, realistically, So, yeah, I think Sukuna definitely displayed some higher levels of, battle intelligence or battle IQ, whatever you want to call it. He worked out adaptation very quickly, didn't panic, and then basically did what he could to immediately exercise Mahoraga in one blow, whereas Dabura kind of did learn very quickly in one fight, which to be honest, not a lot of sorcerers would be able to do, but I think the important takeaway point here is Sukuna just had way more control in his fight than Dabura did in his. And I think what that really comes down to, and a big difference between Sukuna as a whole and Dabura, and probably the most important aspect of this fight in terms of Sukuna's side of things, is just a monumental experience diff. Dabura does not have the level of experience that Sukuna does. No matter how much of a genius Dabura is, it's always just going to be a marginal improvement from Sukuna, whereas Sukuna just is leaps and bounds ahead in terms of Jujutsu knowledge and experience. So what I want to hear from you now, basically, is just what do you think of 15 finger Sukuna, and how do you think his showing against Mahoraga compared to Dabura's?
So I love that you brought up one of my favorite things when it comes to Sukuna in Shibuya, and that is his analytical brain and the way that he quite literally just figures everything out going on with Mahoraga throughout the fight. He starts off by throwing Dismantle, and he goes, oh wow, it was able to work. And honestly, the fight was heavily extended upon in the anime, which made it 10 times crazier. But even in the manga, he reduces everything that Mahoraga does down to a science, and through that finds a way to absolutely demolish Mahoraga. Well, if this doesn't work, then I can do this. And this is probably the similar way that this ability works. And it's honestly very similar to the way that Dabura ends up defeating Mahoraga. So I think overall, when it comes to battle intelligence and jujutsu experience, that's something that Sukuna, no matter if he's at 15 fingers, 10 shadows, Meguna, or even just full Heian era form, you're always going to get that brain, you're always going to get that battle intelligence, and that's just a gift of being born, one, in the Heian era, two, being through so many different types of battle situations as a veteran, that he is just able to play with his food against a being like Mahoraga. And I mean, 15 Finger Sukuna is an insane threat level to anybody in the entire series. Like, that is still cleaving through a good 95 to 99% of the entire verse, if it isn't, you know, final Yuji or Gojo or Yuta or Yuki Tsukumo. Unless you're special grade level, even 15 Finger Sukuna is putting on so much of a massive problem for anyone you are. So I think it would be interesting, you know, whether it would be base Dabura or Dabura who has already awakened. As you said, like, you know, 15 Finger Sukuna is definitely the, you know, the best chance anyone has at taking him on. But I think even when you get into like 10 Shadows and Heian era form, like, the one thing that's a constant is his mind, his brain. I mean, you could even see it just based off the way he uses 10 Shadows and Meguna without ever using the 10 Shadows once. He's already using it better than Megami. Not to skip ahead, but like, even at 15 fingers, you still have that, which is always going to be the biggest problem that anyone is going to have facing Sukuna.
Yeah, I mean, I think that segues quite nicely into what I want to talk about next, which is, of course, the 20 finger equivalent version of Megami Sukuna, or Megana. Now, what I think is crazy about this guy is that he probably has, you know, the closest thing we've seen to full potential use of the 10 Shadows, along with Shrine and his brain, as you said, along with Open Domain, Domain Amp, and all the other things Sukuna can do. And I'm gonna be real, listen, Heian Sukuna is a beast, but I genuinely believe Megana is the single biggest problem a Jujutsu sorcerer can face. I mean, this guy was out here in Megami's body, tanking a 200% output Hollow Purple from Gojo, losing only reinforced arms, and then just regenerated them back no problem. He also survived the final unlimited purple, so I don't think it would be crazy to say that he would be able to tank a fair few light attacks from Dabura, and maybe even that, you know, sub light speed kick, which really does pack a punch and is portrayed to be, you know, the same kind of attack level as a Fuga or an unlimited hollow purple. So with the 10 Shadows, you know, he could potentially bear the burden of adaptation, tank Dabura's attacks, and even once or twice would allow for the wheel to start spinning, and then later on, Mahoraga can emerge, fully adapted to Dabura's technique, and at that point it's kind of GG's, you know, Sukuna can dip into the shadows, he can be a little bitch, or he can stay and fight side by side with Mahoraga. Either way, Dabura's fried, because there is absolutely nothing he's going to be able to do against a fully adapted Mahoraga fighting alongside a 20-finger Sukuna. And honestly, thinking about it now, okay, sure, there is a slight problem with Dabura's speed that I'll get onto later in the video, but like, oh my days, like, I don't think this is even a conversation. In terms of this, just having the versatility of the 10 Shadows alongside everything else, I'm very happy giving this dub to Megana. The only thing about this is, yes, Dabura most definitely has the capability of one-shotting Mahoraga should he choose, but obviously, if Megana is going to bear the burden of adaptation, or if Dabura doesn't have knowledge on Mahoraga, either which way, Mahoraga is going to adapt, and that's GG's. I'm not even going to try and pretend. Obviously, I want to know what you think about this whole Megana thing, Noop, so please do, you know, feel free to give me your input, but I'm pretty set on this, I'm not going to lie.
I mean, you really brought up one of the most important things to mention, which is the fact that so many people argue and debate that Meguna might even be a stronger version than Heian era Sukuna. I mean, obviously both of them have their exact advantages, right? But the thing with Meguna is you get everything that was so devastating and so dangerous in 15 Finger Sukuna. You get the insane level of dismantle projection that's just able to just break through multiple city blocks, if not more so, just at a casual flick of the wrist. You have his cleave that's able to adjust to anybody's durability, no matter what it is. You have, which is Meguna, that just rips through Ishigori's maximum durability, probably the highest durability you could ever get in OG series.
With the sole exception of Satoru Gojo, of course.
You know, excluding people like Yuji and Sukuna themselves, of course, and maybe even Maki. But without getting off topic, even though light is going to be an insane kind of technique to go up against, as well as the physical manifestation of the murderous intent, we've seen that be brought out in like the way that he instantly kills Mahoraga on first glance. Sukuna would definitely have to be on his best game, but when you consider all of the destruction he was able to cause at 15 fingers, even just having access to Divine Furnace, having access to everything that I've talked about before, but now he's got the 10 Shadows with Nue, with Max Elephant. Even though we may not have seen him use all of the different Shikigami, he was able to compete with Gojo using things like Agito, as well as you mentioned Mahoraga, whether he's using the Dharma Chakra Wheel and bearing the burden of adaptation himself, putting that burden of adaptation on Megami, and the fact that he can summon Mahoraga, he can jump between the different shadows and Bottomless Well. If it comes down to hand-to-hand or close combat, I definitely think Sukuna is 110% able to have an advantage when it comes to that side of the fight. There's so many different varieties to Meguna's fighting style that for someone like Dabura, that granted, sure, he's also able to adapt very well and has a very analytical mind. I'm not saying it's going to be outright impossible, but I will 110% say that Meguna offers the most kind of versatility for Sukuna in this fight. Heian-era Sukuna and 15-finger Sukuna are pretty stagnant when it comes down to it. You can hold them down to a pin as say, I know what they're going to do. Meguna is just that much more random and wild of a fighter.
Yeah, well said, to be honest. And that, of course, brings us on to Heian form Sukuna. Now, I'm not going to be using Heian-era Sukuna because we know nothing about that guy. Kamatoke barely even existed in the main series, and God knows what he 10 does. And also, you know, it's not like Dabura's going to be attacking or weakening his soul or connection to Megami, so I'm fine just leaving it as the, Heian form Sukuna we got in JJK. Obviously, he has 4 arms and 2 mouths, as well as just being, built fucking different. There's no other way to put it. He's bloody jacked, which gives him the advantage in obviously fighting hand to hand because, well, if I want to fight someone, I would rather have 4 arms than 2. I feel like I shouldn't really need to explain that part. But he also has the advantage of doing hand seals while fighting and chanting out of his second mouth. God knows how that actually works because apparently it, frees up his lung capacity by chanting through his second mouth. Don't know why that mouth doesn't need the air from his lungs, but that's what the narrator tells us. So yeah, he has the massive advantage of just being able to boost all of his attacks and also go in for much higher level physical combat. And let's just make sure we don't downplay Sukuna's hand-to-hand skill. This dude is boxing with Gojo and Yuji. I should not have to say anything more than that. Actually, boxing with Gojo is a bit of a yeah, he had 2 arms, but boxing, he landed a hit against Gojo. Let's not even go there. But one thing I really wanted to point out that should be easier for a Heian form Sukuna to use than a Meguna, because Meguna obviously has to keep on employing his 10 Shadows technique if he wants to actually, use it, is domain amplification. Heian Sukuna find it much easier to, kind of switch back and forth between Shrine and domain amp, and if he's able to just tank a Hollow Purple from Gojo without domain amplification, then tanking Dabura's light attacks with domain amp will help massively. Now, domain amplification creates a kind of simple domain-like space around your body, which fills up and kind of absorbs the incoming technique. It can't take in all of it if it's a high output technique like Red, for example, so Dabura's attacks won't be completely nullified, but the damage will be massively reduced, and Sukuna obviously then has RCT and can heal. So yeah, I think it's safe to say if he does employ tactics like domain amplification, he's not going to get the Mahoraga treatment. He's not going to be absolutely obliterated and shredded into atoms immediately. I think that's very unlikely. And then of course there is the domain expansion, the open barrier domain expansion, which is just so much better than a closed domain because he can destroy the barrier from the outside, and all the situation we saw with Gojo basically will just be rinse repeat with Dabura, especially since Dabura doesn't have much domain experience and we don't really know what his sure hit does. The only way that I can really swing a domain clash in Dabura's favor is if he observes Sukuna using an open barrier domain and just goes, aha, that looks fun, and then fucking does it. Honestly, that's not even crazy. I would not put it past him. He looked at the bloody Nalnok spaceship and went, maybe I should wrap my technique in a barrier. That's smart. And then he just practically invented domain expansions the same way he did RCT. The guy's a bloody genius. I would not be surprised if that happens. For the sake of this video and for making it more entertaining, I'm gonna say he's capable of doing it, but we won't really include it in, part of the video because realistically, I don't know what Dabura's domain does, and there's no point me sitting here spewing headcanon about how I think he can erase 4 universes at once. Let's kind of forget the domain thing for now, because I think Dabura would get absolutely slimed by Sukuna's domain. I think the one advantage he has there is obviously his insanely high-speed movement can just help him exit the range, and then if Sukuna chooses to close the barrier, Dabura can try and clash it, I guess. I still think he'd lose that, but whatever. Now, if you want to take it one step further, as if the open domain wasn't unfair enough, we could say this is post-Gojo fight and give Sukuna world-cutting slash, in which case, if that hit Dabura, it's GG's, let's be real. So what I'm going to say for now, I think, is that I believe it's very similar to the video we made recently on your channel about, Modulo Yuji versus Dabura, where I think Sukuna has absolutely all of the means to completely completely crush Dabura in a head-on conflict. He has so many win cons, it's ridiculous, right? I think what it will really come down to, though, is how each of them choose to actually enter the fight, and also just kind of who lands the fatal blow first. Because Sukuna does have all of this amazing firepower, but it's not going to be any use to him when Dabura's speed is just next level. So I think it really does just come down to, you know, who's going to make that decisive first strike first and kind of tip the balance of the fight in their favor. Who is going to manage to land the fatal blow before the other? If Dabura gives Sukuna any kind of chance to, like, go straight in for a kill shot, yeah, Dabura's cooked. But I don't think a fight between them realistically would go down that way. But before I, delve a little bit more into that, I want to know what Noop has to say, so please take it from here.
The one thing I will definitely say when it comes down to the actual matchup itself is I think if it's base Dabura, who hasn't really unlocked his potential and hasn't really undergone the transformation into, sub-light speed, that's going to be a significant measure, as well as if Sukuna is fighting on his own without any kind of help from someone like Mahoraga. I do think the battle actually does tend to shift, just because the main issue is if Dabura is fighting on equal ground, he hasn't awakened yet. I think Sukuna's experience definitely gives him the battle, no doubt. Dabura will just get crushed before Sukuna is done playing with him. But that's where the difference shows up, because if you have a Dabura who is able to move at just plain light speed itself, or close to it, I should say, I want to clarify that. I think at that point, what shifts is no matter how much experience Sukuna has, I think if Dabura is able to land a similar kick on Sukuna that he did to Mahoraga before, I don't see a way for Sukuna to actually dodge, react, or even stop that. But I'm not sure if you have anything, to counter that.
Yeah, no, I agree, to be honest. And I feel like that kind of brings me on to what I wanted to talk about before, which is if this fight were to actually happen, I think Sukuna is going to be his own worst enemy here, because that guy just loves to fight. And every time he comes across someone that he sees potential in, yes, potential, I know, he basically kind of throws them a bone. He even says it himself, right? Like, he'll throw them a bone and effectively just see how far he can push them, see how good their mastery of Jujutsu can get. I think the Higuruma fight is the best example of this, right? So what I'm gonna sit here and say quite boldly is that if Sukuna enters the fight with the intention of killing Dabura as fast as possible, I would say that the entire fight shifts dramatically in Sukuna's favor, but I don't think in character Sukuna would do that. I think he would at least want to see what Dabura's got, and at that point, it could already be too late, because Dabura's not interested in that kind of stuff. At least he doesn't think he is, right? Like, most of his fights he ends pretty quickly. The one against Mahoraga is where he learned to actually kind of enjoy the process of fighting, right? We're gonna end up in a situation where Dabura is gonna unleash his base attacks, and Sukuna will not be able to react to even the base light and killing intent attacks that Dabura can fire. Mahoraga didn't react to them at all. He might be able to dodge them if you go with the absolutely ridiculous highball that I don't believe in, that Sukuna dodged Kashimo's EM wave. I think that was an aim dodge, but I'm gonna give you it this time. I'm gonna say that Sukuna reacted to it, alright? He managed to dodge it. It doesn't even matter, because if he can dodge a light attack from Dabura, sure. Can he dodge an entire barrage of them coming at him from multiple directions? Hell no. And Dabura can just keep piling this on and on and on. Now, sure, that's probably not going to kill Sukuna straight away. He might then lock in and end the fight. Okay, it still kind of swings in Sukuna's favor. But then what I think would actually happen is Dabura is just going to reach this point where he goes, okay, time to go sub-light speed. And at that point, if Sukuna allows him to decide and go sub-light speed, I think the fight is over. Because no matter how fast you want to make Sukuna's reaction time and combat speed, even if you want to push it to light speed, Dabura's travel speed is sub-light speed. So no matter how you look at it, Dabura is just monumentally, like a ridiculous level faster than Sukuna when he enters that state. And yeah, judging by the fact that that light speed or sub-light speed kick is presented to be a similar level kind of attack to Unlimited Purple or Fuga, a few of these and his base attacks mixed together, there's nothing Sukuna can do about it. Like, even an open domain wouldn't help him here, because Dabura is running out of that 200 meters in like such a ridiculously small amount of time that the first attack attack isn't even probably going to hit him. Again, I really think it depends on how they go into this fight, and if we put them in character, Sukuna is just going to be his own downfall. And as soon as Dabura starts going for it, that's it. There's nothing he can do anymore. It's probably just going to be an easy dub for Dabura. So yeah, if we said that Sukuna walks in and immediately world-cutting slashes, sure, Dabura's cooked, but that's not realistic for Sukuna's character. Like, let's not even lie, that's not how he moves. And that's how I think the fight would go. That is my honest opinion. But I low-key might have gone a bit overboard there, so let me know what you think.
No, I know, I completely agree. It's kind of the reason why I said like Meguna is honestly probably the best matchup for Dabura, just because Sukuna can quite literally, as Yuka did, you know, without the suspended death, hide inside of the shadows and throw in some kicks, throw in, you know, some piercing blood, you know, pseudo piercing bloods here and there just to add into the overwhelming, you know, attacks. But Mahoraga is the best chance that Meguna Sukuna in general has of fighting Dabura, and that's just because we know if a sublight speed kick comes, Mahoraga is the only one that's going to be able to survive it. Again, like I said, no matter what version of Sukuna we're dealing with, whether you have domain amplification, whether you have curse energy reinforcement, I think an attack of that level, even if you want to say that Sukuna can survive it, coming out of it looking similar to how he did after like the unlimited hollow, or God forbid, even worse, you have the problem of if he uses reverse curse technique to heal, then Dabura can just simply do it again. This is just a basic attack for Dabura. Whereas even coming close to a level of destructive capacity or attack for that is probably everything Sukuna has to offer in his arsenal, whether it be Divine Furnace, which we know has to have a charge up, or he, like you said, he tries to go for a world cutting slash. Even then, at that point, do we know if Sukuna is going to be able to target that fast enough before Dabura can land another kick and already be out of the spot that Sukuna is targeting? The problem is, and the big issue is that I think a lot of people don't realize, even if Dabura is like sub-light speed, Todo's 50 swaps per second was calculated as close as it possibly could be to require sub-relativistic reaction time. The one thing that kind of is an anti-feat and kind of makes it seem like at best Jujutsu Kaisen could be highballed at lightning speed is because of Sukuna not being able to perceive and react to the sub-relativistic Todo 50 swaps per second. The best chance Sukuna had at reacting to that was literally just waiting helplessly in the swap and being like, all right, where's Yuji Spark of Curse Energy? All right, it's right here. And that was Sukuna's tell as to how he could respond and react to that. He just had to literally not pay attention to the swaps because it was just impossible to even keep up with. So if we're going to go off of that, even if Dabura is sub-relativistic, you know, in any sense of the word, he's going to be moving at a pace that Sukuna couldn't even contend with before. And also, light travels roughly 1,100 times faster than lightning itself. And I want to bring that up and make that very clear because I've seen some people try and say that, like in our UG contest or in a Sukuna contest, if they have some kind of amp, like if they black flash, they get 120%, they can amp their stats. There is no world or reality in which Sukuna is going to be able to amp himself to the level that Dabura is going to be moving at. Again, if he can have Mahoraga adapt as Meguna, and like you said, he plays cautiously because like you said before, Sukuna is someone that doesn't kill his opponent outright. He wants to see what his opponent can do. I don't necessarily think he's as bad as someone like Goku or like a Vegeta against semi-perfect Cell would be, where he's going to let Dabura just power up to the point where Dabura is just absolutely destroying him. I think Sukuna is still going to want to come out on top, and once Dabura starts moving in a way where Sukuna feels like, oh shit, I need to take this seriously, I think we would probably see Sukuna's demeanor change just a little bit to be like, all right, I need to kill this person before he actually takes me out. But the difference is, again, with the way that Dabura moves himself, Dabura, as we saw in that duel with Mahoraga, if Mahoraga wasn't adapting, Dabura would have silenced Mahoraga in one blow. So if he was to do anything like that similar to Sukuna, and we're saying no matter what version of Sukuna that's going up against Dabura, this attack, even from a base Dabura, is moving faster than Sukuna can even perceive, even if it's somewhat close to the 50 swaps per second. then there's no way Sukuna is even going to have a chance to use any of that experience, any of those things that we talked about in the video earlier. As great as they are, and as experienced as someone like Sukuna is compared to Dabura, I think Dabura is just that much more overpowered. He's something that no one on Earth has ever seen before. And I think the difference between someone like Sukuna and someone like Modulo Yuji is ultimately Modulo Yuji has just shown a level of base power that eclipses, I think, everything that Sukuna has. So even though there's that massive speed difference, there's at least a chance he can off-put that same kind of insane power. But I just think Dabura has purely outclassed anything the mainline series has brought up until this point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I actually really love your point about Todo and the 50 swaps per second. I genuinely had not even thought of that, because it's true, you know, Todo pulled up and Sukuna went, this guy. And then when Todo started doing the 50 swaps per second, Sukuna just straight up gave up, bro. He literally said, yep, it's not possible. No one can get used to this technique. That is a ridiculous thing for Sukuna to say, to see someone use their technique and go, nah, can't be done, doesn't make sense. And then Todo just deceives him with 3 whole layers of deception. Like, only Gojo had managed to pull a maneuver like that on Sukuna with looping the red around the building. And even that was just like a layer of deception. But now Todo was using that thing to just go, boom, you got cooked, mate. And Sukuna was like, nothing I can do about that. It's just different. So that's a great point. I really like that.
And I don't think he needs to charge up for this either. I think I want to make that clear as well. Like, Dabura is just like able to just move at that speed. I don't think he needs to like run, like, you know, and then he starts picking up speed more and more and more and more like Naoya does. I think a lot of people are comparing that to Naoya, where he needs to, you know, do the burst speed and multiply his speed over and over again. Dabura is just able to just take off at that speed. And it seems like he's completely able to change direction. He's able to aim his attacks. From everything that it looks like, I really don't see there being a situation either where like Sukuna is able to react. He's able to dodge the first attack, and then, or for example, Sukuna sees Dabura start charging up and Sukuna just unleashes like a net of dismantles that Dabura can't see coming. But before Sukuna is even able to know what's going on, Dabura would have already made his move. And even if Sukuna can somehow dodge or block or survive it, Dabura is going to be able to do a second attack in no time at all. Sure, you could say that Dabura might then, heal his leg and be like, oh, wow, you know, Jujutsu is really, really cool. And that gives Sukuna his chance. But again, the way that Dabura reacts, unless Dabura starts having fun with the fight too, which I don't see happening, because again, Sukuna is not going to be able to just adapt, survive, and keep on going like someone like Mahoraga would. I just don't see a reality where Sukuna is going to be able to drag that fight out long enough to make that critical attack.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I have to say about that is that based off what Dabura himself says, it does seem like he has to charge up his speed. But where I think you're absolutely right and where your point stands is that as soon as he takes off, he's already going to be starting at a speed that is well beyond anything in JJK is able to keep up with. It's just about then closing the gap between...
You're right. Yeah, I think that's what I meant. Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, your point still stands because, you know, as soon as he takes off, it's already going to be reaching a speed no one can deal with, which kind of just brings me on to my conclusion that I think Dabura would cook 15-finger Sukuna, you know, in Yuji's body. I don't think that's really close or a debate. I think Heian Sukuna, absolutely, especially if you give him world cutting slash, he can beat Dabura. He is one of the few characters in this series that if he actually just went in for the kill, would probably beat Dabura, right? But if you put them in character in a battle, Dabura does just blatantly have the advantage because Sukuna's not going to be ready to deal with that unbelievably busted technique and speed. And earlier in the video, I said that Megano would be a pretty easy dub against Dabura, and I honestly, now that I think about it, I might take that back. I still think Megano has the absolute best chance, and it does still lean in Megano's favor, but I don't actually think it's as one-sided as I made it out to be honest, because again, that technique is so nasty. So, yeah, do you have any, like, final thoughts, closing thoughts before I wrap up the video?
No, that's everything. I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly, and yeah, I just don't... no matter what version of Sukuna it is, unless, again, it's Meguna and he just hides behind Mahoraga again, way more than he ever did against Gojo.
Yeah, it's kind of just like, his technique is just I don't know, Dabura is just one of those characters where it's hard to even have a conversation. I say that after recording like 30 minutes of a conversation, but like it is hard to argue that anyone really gets around that speed because he just absolutely diffs the verse. So yeah, for the conclusion of the video, I think we pretty much agree that 15 Finger would get cooked. Megana would probably beat Dabura because of the mahoraga and shadow advantage, you know, if he played it like a little bitch. And then Heian Sukuna, you know, he can beat him, but I think he would just get cooked by Dabura. So that is Dabura versus Sukuna. And obviously, thank you very much, No Operator, for jumping on the video. I do appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a fun discussion. I appreciate it. And yeah, definitely like the video, hype the video, all that good stuff.
And yeah, I will catch you guys next time, I guess.